Today's story is about King Nebuchadnezzar's son, Belshazzar. Now, Belshazzar had become king after his father, and one day he decided to have a huge banquet, and he invited his nobles and his wives, and you'll never guess how many people came to this banquet. 1,000 people. That was a huge banquet. So he invited all these people to his banquet. And so he was there and he was drinking wine with his nobles. And as he was drinking wine, he had what he thought was a great idea, but it wasn't such a good idea. You see, he remembered that his father, King Nebuchadnezzar, when he had captured Judah, had gone into God's temple in Jerusalem and had brought some of the treasures back to Babylon from the temple. Now, God had allowed him to do that, but they came back, but they were still God's treasures. And amongst those treasures were goblets of silver and gold. And so Belshazzar ordered that these goblets be brought into the banquet, and then he and his nobles drank wine out of the goblets. And not only did they drink wine out of the goblets, but they praised and thanked their gods of gold and of silver and of bronze and of iron and of wood and of stone. Now, I brought some examples of those here today, okay? So, for example, my ring is made out of gold. And this spoon is made out of silver. And this is some bronze. And here's an iron bar. A block of wood. And some stone. Now, can any of these things talk to me? No. Can any of these things move on their own? No. If I asked this silver spoon to help me with something, could it help me by itself? No. Say my grandmother was sick. Could this iron bar make her better? No. What about this block of wood? If I was afraid, can this block of wood help me? No, it can't do anything to help me. What about this gold ring on my hand? Can this gold ring protect me? Keep me safe? No, none of these things can do anything because they're just things. God created the whole world and everything in it, and these are just created things. They're not alive, they can't hear or see or do anything. But yet these are the things that Belshazzar was praying to and thanking. Well, suddenly, Belshazzar saw something. He saw a finger appear, and it started to write on the plaster of the wall in the room they were in. And it was right beside the lampstand, and this is what it wrote. It wrote, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. Well, as the king was watching the finger write, his face grew very pale. And in fact, his knees knocked together and his legs, they actually gave way and he collapsed. He was so afraid. And he looked at that writing and he couldn't read it. And he actually didn't know what it meant. And so, who do you think he called for help? He called the magicians and the astrologers and the enchanters and the diviners, all the wise men of Babylon. And he asked them to come and he said, this writing has appeared, I can't read it. Whoever reads it and tells me what it means, that person, I'm going to clothe them in purple, which was a big thing because it was very rare back then. And I'm going to put a gold chain around their neck. And I'm going to make them third highest ruler in the whole kingdom. Well, those wise men looked, but you know what? They had no idea. And do you remember why? Because they were going to the wrong source for help. Well, they looked, they couldn't do it. They said, King, we have no idea. And the king, his face got more pale because he was very afraid then. His nobles looked, no one had any idea what it meant. Well, the queen, she actually wasn't in the banquet at that point. And so she heard voices, though, from the hall. And so she came in and she saw the king and she said, "Oh, king, live forever. Don't let your face go so pale. Why are you so afraid?" She said, there is someone in your kingdom who can help you. In fact, King Nebuchadnezzar, your father, well, he knew of a man, and he was one of the exiles, and he's known to be very wise and very intelligent. And in fact, he's known to be able to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve really difficult problems. So don't be alarmed and don't be afraid, king. Just call Daniel. In fact, King Nebuchadnezzar, your father, he had made him chief over all the wise men. Well, Belshazzar thought it was a good idea. So he called Daniel in, and Daniel came and he saw Daniel. He said, "Are you Daniel, one of the exiles that my father brought from Jerusalem here? And I've been told that the spirit of the holy gods lives in you, and that you can interpret dreams, and that you can explain riddles, and that you can solve difficult problems. I've heard that you can do many things because you're very wise. And so, Daniel, here is my problem. I can't read this writing. I don't know what it means. And if you do for me, I'm going to clothe you in purple. I'm going to put a gold chain around your neck, and I'm going to make you third highest ruler in all of the kingdom." Well, what do you think Daniel said? Well, as usual, Daniel surprises us, because Daniel said to King Belshazzar, "King Belshazzar, you can keep your rewards for yourself and you can give your gifts to somebody else. But I will interpret this for you, O king. You see, O king, your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, he was made a great and mighty king by the Most High God. In fact, the Most High God gave him glory and splendor, and anyone King Nebuchadnezzar wanted to kill, he killed. Anyone he wanted to live, lived. Anyone he wanted to promote, he promoted. Anyone he wanted to humble, he humbled. But your father, Belshazzar, he grew proud. And when he grew proud, God humbled him and drove him away from people. And he went and lived among the wild animals, and he lived with the wild donkeys, and he ate grass like cattle, and he was very humbled. And the dew from heaven drenched him every day for 7 years. But he was that way until he admitted that God is the Most High God and the most powerful, and that he decides who gets to be king and who doesn't. But Belshazzar, even though you knew that, O king, even though you knew all that, you still brought those goblets, God's goblets in, and you and your nobles drank wine out of them, and then you praised the gods of gold and silver, and of iron and bronze, and of wood and of stone, even though they can't see or hear or understand or do anything. And you failed to praise the God of heaven, who holds your life and your future in his hand. And so this is what God has written about you, Belshazzar. Mene, the days of your reign have been numbered, and they have come to an end. You will not be king anymore. Tekel, you have been weighed in the scales and found wanting. Parsin, your kingdom, O King Belshazzar, is going to be divided between the Medes and the Persians. Well, King Belshazzar did do as he said. He clothed Daniel in purple, and he put a gold necklace around his neck, and he made him third highest ruler in the kingdom. But that night, Belshazzar was killed, and Darius the Mede became king in his place. Well, you know, we've been learning lots about Daniel from the book of Daniel and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And the stories in the book of Daniel are exciting and amazing. We have seen so many things. And we've seen, though, that these men had faith in God. They trusted in God. And I hope that you have learned to trust in God, too, because the God that Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego trusted and had faith in is the same God that we worship. And he's still just as powerful today as he was back then. See you next time.